Welcome to my podcast on how not to retire, a psychological approach to retiring healthy and wealthy. Episode 9, Identity with a Little Purpose. Greetings, I'm your host, Dr. Richard Himmer. A little quote to start out our time together today by Steven Pressfield from the book The War of Art. The professional loves her work. She is invested in it wholeheartedly, but she does not forget that the work is not her. Today we're exploring a topic that resonates deeply with many, the importance of identity, particularly during the transition into retirement. As you know, retirement is a milestone in life that can evoke, a mix of emotions. For some, it's a long-awaited freedom from the daily grind. It's a chance to pursue passions and dreams that have been put on hold while raising a family and doing the normal things that go on between ages 20 and 60. For others, it's a daunting shift marked by uncertainty and a loss of identity tied to a career. Being retired is actually just a place mark in time. It's not an identity. You do not identify as, I'm retired. That's not who you are. It's a station in life. It's what you're doing, maybe. Like if you were to say, I'm playing pickleball. Okay, I'm playing pickleball, but my identity is not I'm playing pickleball. So these statements of who we are, these identity statements, can carry a wide range. Let me give you a couple of them that would be acceptable in the realm of a true identity or the realm of retirement. They're not all-encompassing, but you'll get the drift here. I'm a spouse. I'm a parent. I'm a grandparent. I'm a friend. I'm a runner. I'm an athlete. And I'm a pickleball player or a golfer. I'm a writer, a musician, or a student of life. Now, here are some examples of behaviors that people may claim as part of their identity, but typically are dysfunctional, especially when we're talking about in retirement. I'm just a workaholic. In other words, I'm just a hard worker. That's who I am. But in retirement, this identity leads to feelings of purposelessness, as the individual will struggle to find meaning outside of work. Here's another one. I'm a caregiver. I'm the one who always takes care of everyone else. While caregiving may be fulfilling, at least in the moment, those who define themselves solely as caregivers neglect their own needs. And that's not maybe. That's almost always. They're very nice, but they're not kind. They don't have boundaries. Therefore, they're going to struggle during the retirement years because their caregiving role diminishes. The challenge here, and we're not going to go into it in today's conversation, the challenge with the caregiver or the rescuer, if you will, is that they will then start creating opportunities to be in that position. Caregivers rarely make friends, but they do take hostages. Okay, here's one. I like things done my way. That's just how I am. In other words, I'm a control freak. In retirement, this identity can cause conflict or contention with family members, with friends, because the individual is going to struggle to adapt to a different style of living. Here's one. I have high standards. That makes me who I am. In other words, I'm a perfectionist. Perfectionism often leads to procrastination, will lead to anxiety, and real struggles enjoying retirement. If said individual feels that they can't meet their own high expectation, a perfectionist is someone who is not balanced in expectations. Then there's the pessimist. I'm just a realist. I don't sugarcoat things. Constantly focusing on the negative aspects of life is not being a realist. A realist also is a problem solver or looks for solutions. Too many pessimists, too many realists are really good at finding the problem, and that's where they leave it. They're not good at going beyond that. So that's not an identity that's healthy. It's not an authentic identity. Then there's the martyr, who always puts others first, very much like the caregiver, because too often caregivers become martyrs. And so rather than actually enjoying it, they start loathing. They start feeling a grudge towards others, that others don't serve as much as they do. So their own sacrifices start becoming the focus, and it's where they're going to get their temporary hits of their opioids, because it's an addiction to be doing that all the time. Okay, what about the busy bee? I'm always on the go. That's how I've always been. Being busy is my identity. I can speak to this because I grew up in a family where my grandmother and my mother were always really busy. They weren't productive, but they were really busy, so they didn't know how to relax. They didn't know how to go on vacation. I remember one time we did a family reunion, and we had gone to this huge church with a big gym in it. We did a bunch of indoor sports for the morning, and then we went outside and started playing football. While we were outside playing football, my mom, who's a busy bee, cleaned up all of the food and packed it and then went home. We returned from the football game hoping we'd be able to get into our pop, our chips, and some more hot dogs, and they were all gone. So we called my mom, and she says, "Oh yeah, well, I was done, so I just packed it up and I went home." That's a busy bee. It's her identity by behavior, but it's not really her identity. Okay, here's one. The lone wolf. I prefer to do things on my own. That's just my nature. I'm very independent. That's not independent. That's radically independent. Those who move to a position of being radically independent oftentimes miss the benefits of social connections and support, but then they feel like they play the role of the victim as a way to medicate the pain. Lone wolves, that's not a healthy lifestyle. And so people who claim to be introverts and hide behind being the lone wolf are actually acting out in an addictive behavior. Here's an interesting one called the materialist. I find joy in acquiring things. That's what makes me happy. Well, actually, it doesn't make you happy. It gives you a hit, like if you were to take a drink of alcohol, or you were to cut yourself, or you were to do some sort of dysfunctional but harmful behavior. Buying things constantly is not a way to find joy or happiness. It's like when you're talking to an alcoholic and says, "Well, what do you really want in life? What do you want to be happy?" And the answer is, "Well, I want another drink of alcohol. That'll make me happy." Well, no, it'll medicate you for a couple minutes, but you're not going to be happy, because as soon as that goes away, it's going to be miserable. Let me conclude this section with the gossip, the gossiper. I'm just interested in what's going on. People tell me things. Well, engaging in gossip and focusing on others' lives prevents you from focusing on personal growth. So in other words, when you're focused on talking about people, let me give you a quick quote. Hyman Rickover said, "Small minds discuss people. Average minds discuss events. Great minds discuss ideas." What the gossipers don't get is that they're not growing. They're not moving past it. They're not finding true joy. And as a matter of fact, while you may say, if you're the gossiper, that people like telling you things, that's because they have the same addiction you do, and you just might be better at spreading it. It's critical, it's essential to recognize that while these behaviors may feel like part of an identity, they're actually limiting and preventing individuals from fully embracing the opportunities and joys of retirement. In fact, they're actually not identity statements, as alluded to. They're behavior-based justifications for being miserable. By understanding and addressing these dysfunctional patterns, retirees can actually develop a much more authentic and fulfilling sense of self. You have the time now. What about living in the past with your identity? Let me give you an example. Like, I'm the former CEO of, or I'm a retired military general, or I'm a retired managing director. If your identity is yesterday, reliving the past will be insatiable and never bring satisfaction. Our careers often become intertwined with our sense of self. Our job titles, responsibilities, and achievements shape how we perceive ourselves and how others perceive us. But when the time comes to bid farewell to the workplace, well, now what? What remains? Retirement isn't just a change in routine. It's a transition in identity, especially if the identity is connected, intertwined to work. So if you're still working, perhaps the key is, what about now? What about finding out your true identity before you retire? You've been so busy from starting in your 20s on, working, trying to discover where you want to be in the world, that perhaps you haven't had a chance to really find out who you are. At its core, identity is the essence of who we are. It's a collection of traits, beliefs, and this is where it gets real important, values and experiences that make us unique. It's the answer to the question, what makes you, you? Our identities are often shaped by external factors such as our jobs, societal expectations, and cultural norms. We adopt roles and personas that align with these influences. The problem is, sometimes we do that at the expense of our true selves. We try to be something we're not. We try to be something or someone that others want us to be or expect us to be, and we don't want to disappoint them. In other words, we lose our focus. We don't know who our true selves are. Beginning at conception, we're hardwired to connect with our mother, that's one unit, our father, that's 2 units, and our parents, or parental units, comprising a single unit. So that's a total of 3 connections, mother, father, parents acting as one. The degree to which we connect influences our drive to learn, grow, and change. So the level to which we accomplish the 2 primary axioms in life, number 1, to connect, and number 2, to learn, grow, and change, determines our authenticity. Authenticity, or what I call identity, true identity, is the quality of being true to yourself and the capacity to shape your life from an accurate and deep knowledge of yourself. But that has to be based on universal principles. Our identity determines our purpose. So if I know who I am, I know why I'm getting up in the morning. If I don't know who I am, I have no idea why I'm getting up in the morning, especially as we move into retirement. Our sanity, our health, the aging process hinges on the purpose for why we get up in the morning. And if we don't know, it goes back to our identity. So our solution is getting a real grasp on who you are, or who I am if I were to do it for me. If you view yourself as a writer, for example, then your purpose is to write. The fulfillment you experience stems from your ability to live out your purpose. Therefore, each of us have, and I'm going to add to what I said before, we have 5 core drives. To connect, which is what I started with, that's what the first axiom. To learn, that's the next. To be authentic, that means knowing who you are. If I know who I am, and I've connected with healthy connections, if I'm now learning and growing, I have a purpose. And that purpose leads to happiness, joy, and well-being. So to say it again, we're driven to connect. And to the level we connect will determine how we learn. And I'll cover this in another segment. Because sometimes we're lifelong learners and we actually can read something, study something, and be taught something, and we know what to do. Too many people are self-help junkies. They read a lot, they learn a lot, but they don't know how to apply it. Knowledge is not power. I say that again. Knowledge is not power, despite what everyone likes to hear themselves say because they're quoting other people who said it, who also haven't thought about what they just said. Because if knowledge were really power, how many of us would be eating McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, etc.? We know better, but we don't act on it. Wisdom, the applied aspects of knowledge, is power. So we're driven to connect. We're driven to learn, grow, and change. We're driven to discover our true, best, authentic selves. We're driven to live with the purpose that supports our authentic selves. And if we do those 4, we will find happiness, joy, and well-being, which is a drive. And since we're innately driven to do these things, well, let's just start with connections and friends. When we don't connect, especially early on in life in a satiable manner, and into retirement, it's going to hurt. And when it hurts, we're going to find a way to medicate. Likewise, when we don't hit our goals, when we don't have a purpose, when we don't know who we are, when we're not learning with any satiable means at all, it hurts. And when we hurt, we medicate. Medication is the process by which one meets their needs or wants in a misapplied or dysfunctional way. It is any activity one cannot control, and it worsens over time. It's the use of a substance which you're familiar with, so alcohol, weed, tobacco, heroin, things of that nature, external coming in, and it's the use of a behavior to remove pain or to cover pain is a better way to say it. The reality is nobody escapes the trauma of failure in this life. And retirement's going to bring about some pretty new challenges and potential feelings of failure. Since we all fail to some degree in making connections and achieving goals, our happiness, joy, and well-being are decided by our ability to understand and live in acceptance. When we fight our pain, it increases. What you resist persists. And then we're going to move to resistance. Maladaptive behavior, stress, anxiety, and addiction, and our pain increases to the degree we resist. So in other words, when things aren't going well, the way you identify it is first be aware of what it is you're doing that's not working. Live in acceptance that there's some challenges going on, then learn to replace it. We're not covering in too much detail that today. Preparing for or starting your retirement, however, is the ideal time to discover your true self and start that healing process. This is going to sound kind of rude. I don't mean it to be rude. I just mean it to give you an awareness of how true this is. There isn't anyone listening to this at this point in time, or anyone you can see or have met in your lifetime that isn't challenged with some kind of behavior addiction, some dysfunctional or maladaptive behavior that they learned from early on, starting in utero through their early years, their formative years, through their youth into their 20s and 30s. The challenge is, if you're struggling with certain things right now in retirement, if you don't learn to correct it, it's only going to get worse. James Clear wrote a best-selling book called Atomic Habits. His ideas and principles, for example, teach the reader the necessary habits and principles of happiness, joy, and well-being. And you can apply all of these in retirement. He doesn't mention that in retirement because his target audience is everybody. But his approach is universal. Therefore, whether you're in your early 20s or late 60s, this process of being a lifelong learner is exactly what we're talking about. Nothing in his book is new from principle base, but the application and the process might be different than you've heard before, and it's very, very effective. As a general rule, few people are taught the principles at home, school, church, or work that are required to find your true identity and that James Clear covers in his book, Atomic Habits. And I will be giving other ideas and books to read as we move on. Let me do something here. Let me give you a couple of examples of misapplied or dysfunctional behaviors people use to medicate when they don't connect. There's no doubt, as you're listening to this, you're going to think, oh yeah, I know. Yeah, so-and-so does that. Oh yeah, so-and-so does that. But also please be aware, as though you were looking in the mirror, what are you doing that maybe you're not quite aware of? Okay, here's an easy one. Substance abuse. That's overusing alcohol or prescription drugs or illegal drugs to numb emotional pain or escape from reality. Now, everything I'm going to say here, you will probably know someone who's doing. Keep in mind that nothing here that I'm going to mention brings happiness. It simply stops the pain on a temporary basis. Shopping. Compulsive shopping is engaging in excessive buying things to cope with negative emotions or to seek temporary happiness. So keep in mind, if you're related to Amazon in some connected way every day, or you have to go to the dollar store and just buy things for people, that's a compulsive behavior. You're medicating some deep pain. That'd be really nice to know what's going on there and get that corrected. Okay, number 3, overeating or binge eating. People often use food as a way to cope with stress, anxiety, or depression. Typically leads to weight gain and health problems, and almost always stems back to your childhood where mom used food, baking a cookie with milk, to combat distress, right? Number 4, gambling. Engaging in excess gambling is just an escape from reality. You get a temporary high, but then you've got all the consequences associated with losing the money. Number 5, overworking. Burying oneself in work to avoid dealing with personal problems, hence the workaholic comment earlier. When people work to that abundance, they're usually running from something. Number 6, compulsive internet use or gaming or social media. Spending excessive amounts of time on the internet is an escape from reality. Number 7, codependency. Codependency is seeking to control or rescue others as a way to avoid dealing with your own challenges. Another definition which will help. Codependency is that state where your mood or disposition is contingent upon another person's behavior based on your expectations. I'll say it one more time. Codependence is that state where your mood or disposition is contingent upon another person's behavior based on your expectations. This is probably the biggest one. Okay, number 8, risky sexual behavior. That should go without any kind of explanation. This is a problem, and this is a cry for help. Number 9, self-harm. Any kind of cutting, burning. You need to understand that if you don't understand this part, when people cut or burn themselves, that's a pleasure statement for them. They get a temporary hit. It's a big high. And then the last one that we'll cover today is excessive exercise. Engaging in compulsive or excessive exercise as a way to control weight or cope with negative emotions, again, it's an escape thing. You're running away from something by spending so much time in the gym. These behaviors often provide temporary relief or distraction from underlying emotional pain or problems, but they ultimately lead to negative consequences and do not address the root issues. It's important to recognize that these maladaptive coping mechanisms are not getting you closer to where you want to go, and it's important to seek healthier ways to deal with the emotions and challenges, especially when you get to the retirement. Remember, we talked about that aging is the aggressive avoidance of discomfort. Addiction is an avoidance of discomfort because you're doing it as a way to get a hit. But how do you uncover your authentic self to get to the point you have a purpose, to get to the point you can make the connections you want to do, especially after years of living according to societal expectations? Well, it's a journey, one that requires introspection, self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and a willing to embrace change. One approach is to reflect on your values, passions, on your dreams. Maybe you've never had a chance to even express them, or you've expressed them so much it's nauseating, and then you just say it as a way to feel good, knowing you're never going to do anything about it. Those core aspects of yourself can transcend any job title or role that you've had in your life when you discover who you truly are. So what does bring you joy? What ignites your curiosity? What legacy do you want your kids talking about after you're gone? What is going to be said at your funeral? Another approach is to explore new experiences and opportunities, whether it's traveling, volunteering, pursuing a hobby, something you've been curious about for a long time. Actually, retirement is a blank canvas, just waiting for you to paint your masterpiece. And let's not forget the importance of your community and connections. Surrounding yourself with supportive friends, having those friends, and loved ones can provide a sense of belonging and purpose. A reminder that you're not alone, but that must come with the understanding that it's not a shame-based or a guilt-leveraged way of getting people around you. It must be an invitation because they want to be there, not because they're guilt-leveraged to be around you. The minute you start guilt-leveraging family and friends to be around you, you're involved in medication. Just like any one of those other things that we've talked about, you're involved in trying to stop the pain. Now's a great time to prepare not to do that. Perhaps one of the more crucial aspects of discovering your authentic self in retirement is just embracing vulnerability, the willingness to peel back the layers and reveal your true essence, flaws and all. Retirement is not just about money, financial planning, or travel. It's about soul searching and self-discovery. It's about embracing the opportunity to rewrite your story on your own terms. So as you embark on this new chapter in life, remember this. Knowing your authentic self isn't just a luxury. It's a necessity. It's the foundation upon which you can build a life of meaning, purpose, and fulfillment. Thank you very much for joining me on this journey of exploration and self-discovery. Until next time, remember to embrace your true essence and live authentically. Now remember, don't try harder, try different. Until next time, may your habits harmonize with your purpose, leading to a life filled with happiness, joy, and well-being.